Triplets crash. Billionaire's wedding. DNA test leaves everyone in shock. The Langston Hotel ballroom shimmered beneath a ceiling of crystal chandeliers. Gold-trimmed curtains swayed gently near the open French doors, and the smell of roses and champagne filled the air. It was the kind of night people would post about, envy from afar, or remember for decades. This wasn't just any engagement party, it was the merging of two dynasties. Julian Masters, 32, tall, charismatic and CEO of the billion-dollar Masters Development Group, stood at the center of the crowd in a custom black Tom Ford tux. He raised his glass, flashing a brilliant smile, as guests clinked flutes in response. His fiancée, Camilla Langford, glittered in a silver gown beside him, heiress to the Langford political legacy. Their union was billed in the press as America's new royal couple. Cameras flashed, the string quartet picked up tempo. Servers in black moved like clockwork, handing out truffle canapes. Julian took a step back from the crowd, his arm wrapped around Camilla's waist, soaking in the moment. He had worked hard to earn this. Everything was perfect. Until a soft voice cut through the music. "Excuse me, everyone. Sorry to interrupt." Julian turned instinctively toward the voice. A hush rippled across the room, like someone had pulled the plug on the electricity. All eyes shifted toward the grand entrance. Standing in the doorway were three black boys, dressed identically in sharp charcoal suits and black loafers. They couldn't have been older than 10. Each of them stood with shoulders squared and heads high, like soldiers walking into enemy territory. Camilla gripped Julian's arm. "What the hell is this?" One of the boys, the smallest with tight curls and wide brown eyes, took a step forward. "We're not here to cause trouble," he said, "but we have something to say." "And it can't wait." Julian blinked. His first instinct was confusion. Was this some kind of gimmick? A surprise performance? "Hey, kids," he said, forcing a calm smile. "This is a private party. You really shouldn't be here." The tallest boy stepped forward. His voice was calm, deliberate. "You really don't recognize us, do you?" Julian frowned. He studied them more closely. Their eyes, their noses. That one boy's jawline. Something about them looked familiar. Too familiar. The third boy, standing slightly behind the others, stepped forward now. His voice was steady. "We're your sons." "All three of us." Gasps shot through the crowd. A wine glass shattered somewhere near the buffet. Camilla recoiled like she'd been slapped. Julian's smile evaporated. "I'm sorry, what?" "We're your kids," the tallest repeated. "From Naomi Ellis." The name hit Julian like a gut punch. "No," he muttered. "That's not... You can't just show up and say that." "We're not just saying it," said the youngest. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, holding it high. "We brought proof, a DNA test. You can check it yourself." A dozen phones were already recording. Guests whispered. Some took a step back. Others leaned in, hungry for the drama. Julian took the envelope with shaking hands. His name was printed on the outside. He opened it and scanned the document. Lab certified. The boys' names listed. Paternal match, 99.9%. His throat went dry. Camilla's voice snapped through the silence. "Is this some kind of joke? You told me you'd never been serious with anyone before." "You told me I was your only." Julian stammered. I didn't know. I swear." "Oh, you didn't know." "That's your excuse? That's what you're going with in front of hundreds of people?" "Camilla, please, just let me explain." She yanked her hand from his. "My father just walked out." "Half the press corps left with him. Do you know what you've done?" Julian turned to the boys, his voice low and desperate. Why now? Why like this? Because we've been waiting for years, said the tallest, and we saw the press release, the engagement. The photos, we couldn't wait anymore. Camilla's voice turned shrill. You're disgusting, Julian. This is humiliating. She turned on her heel, her heels clacking like gunshots against marble, and stormed out. The string quartet had long since stopped playing. The room was still except for murmurs and whispers. Then, one by one, guests began to file out. Julian stood frozen. He looked down at the document again, trying to breathe. The boys didn't move. Finally, he turned to his assistant, Tony, standing by the bar. Find out who let them in. Who dropped them off? I want names. They came alone, Tony stammered. Security says they arrived in a prepaid Uber. No adult with them. Julian's jaw clenched. He turned back toward the door, but Camilla was long gone. His calls went straight to voicemail. Blocked. Inside the ballroom, a woman in her 60s with striking white hair and an emerald green shawl was sitting casually at a table, sipping champagne. His mother. Elaine Masters. She smiled at the boys. You know, she said, you're quite brave to pull that off. Julian rushed over. Mom, are you serious? You're talking to them. They're children, Julian. And charming ones at that. Possibly more charming than you were at their age. Did you put them up to this? He snapped. You always hated Camilla. Elaine's smile vanished. I might not have liked her, but I would never orchestrate something like this. And frankly, maybe this is a consequence you've earned. Julian stared at her. You think it's true? His father, Gregory, stepped up beside them. They're coming home with us. You'll follow. What? We need to talk, as a family. Julian looked at the boys again. Their postures, their patience, their eyes. It was all starting to make sense. As Gregory escorted the boys out, Julian's sister Tasha passed by. She paused, looked him straight in the eye. Looks like karma finally RSVP'd. Julian remained there in the middle of the empty ballroom, shattered flower petals at his feet, and the air thick with perfume, tension, and regret. Before leaving, the quietest boy, Conrad, turned back. We didn't mean to ruin your life, he said softly. We just wanted you to be part of ours. Julian didn't respond. Couldn't. And as the boy walked away, a single question burned in Julian's chest. Who the hell was Naomi Ellis? And why did her name still hurt when he heard it? He turned to the shattered champagne glass on the ground. The party was over, and something irreversible had just begun. The silence inside the penthouse suite of the Master's Tower was unlike anything Julian had ever experienced. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the silence of something shifting beneath his feet, something irreversible. He had dealt with corporate meltdowns, regulatory investigations, even death threats from angry shareholders. But nothing compared to the weight that now sat on his chest. He entered the open-concept living room with hesitant steps. The marble floors gleamed under the recessed lighting, the scent of his mother's jasmine perfume lingering in the air. Elaine Masters sat calmly on the white leather sectional, one leg crossed over the other, swirling a glass of Malbec like they weren't in the middle of a personal apocalypse. Across from her, the three boys lounged comfortably, one flipping through a book on his lap, another sketching on a hotel notepad, and the last, Conrad, watching Julian with cautious, quiet curiosity. Julian's father, Gregory, stood near the fireplace, arms folded, exuding that familiar, unreadable stillness that made grown men squirm. Julian's voice cracked the silence. You've all made yourselves comfortable, I see. Elaine didn't even look up. They've had a long day. Julian turned toward his father. Is this really happening? Gregory's gaze was ice cold. Sit down. You need to listen. Julian stayed standing. I'm not sitting until someone tells me how the hell this happened. Conrad closed his book. We told you already. You're our father. That's impossible, Julian snapped. I wouldn't know if I had children. I've never had a paternity scare, never signed anything, never even had a conversation about— You're not listening, said the boy with curls. Liam, we're not here to ruin your life. We're here because we have a right to know who we are, and you have a right to know what you left behind. Julian turned toward his mother. Are you really entertaining this? Elaine looked him dead in the eye. You dated Naomi Ellis, Columbia University, architecture major. Black, brilliant. You two were practically inseparable for 6 months. Julian paused. The name hit again, deeper this time. Naomi? I remember her, but that was years ago. We were kids, Gregory spoke. And now those kids have kids. The math checks out, Julian. You just didn't know. Julian's voice rose. So I'm supposed to believe she had my children and didn't tell me, and now they just show up, uninvited, to my engagement party, with cameras? Do you know how this looks? We didn't come for a photo op, Conrad said calmly. We came because you were getting married to someone who didn't know your full story, and neither did you. Julian poured himself a bourbon, his hands shaking slightly. He drank it in one gulp. Where is she? He asked, setting the glass down harder than necessary. Where's Naomi? She doesn't know we're here, said Blake, the quiet one. We made the decision on our own. Julian blinked. You expect me to believe 3 10-year-olds managed to organize a covert mission to blow up a billionaire's engagement? We're 11, Blake corrected, and we had help from a friend. That's all you need to know. Julian turned away, the room spinning. This is insane. Elaine's voice softened. Is it? Or is this the most honest thing that's happened to you in years? I don't even remember the last time I saw Naomi, Julian muttered. I do, Gregory said, stepping forward. It was during your father's funeral. She was at the back of the church. You never noticed. Julian stared at him. You knew. I recognized her. Didn't think much of it, but now it all makes sense. Julian paced. And what about Susie? Camilla's father walked out of that ballroom. The Langford family owns half of our current infrastructure portfolio. This is going to blow back on every project, every partnership. My board is going to have a heart attack. You're worried about deals? Elaine said, voice sharp. You have 3 sons sitting here, and you're calculating stock exposure. I didn't ask for this, Julian exploded. I didn't ask for any of it. The boys sat quietly now. Even Conrad looked down. Julian saw it, the shift in their eyes. They weren't just angry. They were hurt. Gregory spoke again. No one asks for the things that truly matter. You think I planned to raise you while running a multi-state company? No. But when I knew, I showed up. Julian slumped onto the armchair. I need to see her. I need to know if this is real. She lives in Oakland, Liam said. Works as an architect. Solo firm. She doesn't talk about you. And she never told you I existed. No, Blake replied. We found out by accident. Found a box of photos, love letters, even a college yearbook with your name circled. She wasn't hiding you because she was ashamed, Conrad added. She was protecting herself. You walked away, no explanation. No closure. Julian's jaw tightened. The words stung because they rang true. Get me her number, he said. No, Elaine cut in. You don't call her. You go to her. Man to woman, father to mother. You owe her that. Gregory nodded in agreement. Julian looked at the 3 boys. Why now? Why not wait? Why blow up my life this way? Because it wasn't your life alone, Conrad said. It was ours too. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. The penthouse felt cold, sterile. He stood by the window overlooking San Francisco, the glow of the city mocking him. Every light below reminded him of what he didn't know, of what he might have lost. He picked up his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and paused on a name he hadn't thought about in a decade. Naomi Ellis. He didn't have her number. He had nothing. Just a name and a past. He called his head of security. Travis. I need a background check. Quiet, discreet. I need everything on Naomi Ellis. Current location. Occupation. Marital status. If she has kids, I want birth records. I want everything. Travis paused. Is this a threat issue? Julian's voice was hollow. No, it's personal. Very personal. As he ended the call, he whispered to himself, if they really are mine, I won't run this time. But even as he said it, he knew one thing. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. It was about redemption, and whether he had enough of himself left to earn it. Naomi Ellis had been through worse. She'd worked 72-hour weeks on construction sites, faced down arrogant investors who refused to believe a black woman could lead a major development project, and raised 3 boys without ever missing a parent-teacher conference. But none of that prepared her for the moment she stepped off her flight from Amsterdam and saw the words trending on her phone. Hatch billionaire. Baby. Daddy. Triplets. At the altar. Julian. Has kids. The airport terminal seemed to tilt around her as she opened video after video of her son standing on the stage of the most talked-about wedding of the year. Julian Masters' engagement to Camilla Langford had been national tabloid fuel for months. Naomi had ignored every article, every headline. Until now. Because her sons, her boys, had crashed the party. And they hadn't just shown up. They'd brought DNA evidence, called out Julian in front of cameras, and destroyed what looked like the most powerful merger of 2 elite families. On live video, she stood frozen in the terminal, staring at the screen in disbelief. Her phone rang. Tanisha. Girl, came her best friend's voice without preamble. Please tell me you've seen this. I'm watching it right now. Naomi. They shut it down. The whole wedding. Camilla left. The Langfords walked out.
Julian looked like he got hit with a freight train.
Naomi inhaled sharply, her vision blurring.
They swore to me. They said they were staying with Miss
Garcia. That they were working on a school project. Well, they were working on something, Tanisha said. I love those kids, but they didn't just go rogue. This was premeditated. I need to get home, Naomi muttered. Now. She barely remembered the ride back to her Oakland brownstone. Her keys trembled in her hand as she unlocked the front door, stepping into the quiet warmth of a home she'd built alone. The walls were lined with art her sons had painted, their school awards, a few faded college photos of her, and a man she hadn't let herself think about in years. Julian Masters, the one who walked away without warning. Naomi dropped her bags and sank into the couch. Her phone buzzed again, another video. This one was closer, showing Julian taking the DNA results with shaking hands. The look on his face, confused, gutted, almost pleading, sent a pang through her chest. She rubbed her eyes and looked up just in time to hear the front door creak open. Footsteps. 3 sets. Conrad entered first, still wearing his suit. He froze when he saw her. Liam and Blake stepped in behind him, equally frozen. You're home early, Conrad said softly.
I live here,
Naomi said, her voice cold and shaking.
The question is, where have you been?
Liam opened his mouth to respond, but Naomi raised a hand.
Don't.
Just don't. She stood, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on them. You promised me. You said you would wait.
You said we would talk about this. We tried, Blake said, stepping forward. But every time we brought up Dad, you shut down. So your solution was to lie to me and crash a billionaire's wedding?
He was marrying someone else, Conrad said. What if we waited too long and he never knew we existed? Naomi stared at him. That was not your decision to make. Silence. The kind that stings. We didn't do it to hurt you, Liam said gently.
We just wanted him to see us.
Naomi closed her eyes, taking a breath.
Do you have any idea what you've started? You've dragged us into a public spectacle.
We are not some soap opera. You're right, Conrad replied, defiant. We're not. We're real. And he's our father.
You don't know what you've done, she snapped. That man, he's not just anyone.
He's a Masters. They don't lose. They retaliate. This could destroy everything I've built. We're sorry, Mom, Blake said. But we needed to do this. For us. Naomi turned her back to them, her fists clenched at her sides. Go to your rooms. We'll talk in the morning. The boys left quietly. She stood alone in the living room, shaking with rage and fear and something worse. Grief. For a version of her life that had just imploded. Her phone buzzed. A call. Unknown number. She let it ring. Then again. Finally she answered. Hello? A pause. Then a familiar voice. Naomi. Julian. She didn't say anything. I saw them. The boys.
I know,
she said flatly.
I didn't know, Naomi. I swear.
If I had...
You would have what?
She interrupted.
Stayed? Called?
Come back? I don't know, he admitted, but I deserve to know. You left, she said. You got that fancy fellowship, and I never heard from you again.
Not a word. I thought you moved on. I saw you once, with a guy. You assumed wrong, she snapped.
He was my cousin. We were planning his engagement party. Julian was silent. You abandoned me, she continued. I was 22, alone, and pregnant with 3 babies, and I made it work. Without you. I'm not trying to erase that, he said.
I just want a chance to be their father.
Naomi's voice was like ice.
You don't get to decide that now. They are not a second chance at your legacy. They're not.
They're the best thing I never knew I had. There was a beat of silence between them. I want to see you, he said finally.
Talk. Not as enemies, just 2 people trying to figure this out.
Naomi exhaled.
Tomorrow?
1 o'clock, Café Verde in Emeryville.
I'll be there.
She hung up and stared at the ceiling, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry. But instead, she did what she always did. She went upstairs, tucked her boys into bed, and whispered, I love you. But you have no idea what you've started. Downstairs, the video kept playing, and the world kept watching. Café Verde was quiet that afternoon, tucked between a yoga studio and a vegan bakery in downtown Emeryville. The kind of place where tech execs met over matcha lattes and freelancers sat for hours nursing iced Americanos. But today, Naomi wasn't there for leisure. She was there for war. She sat at the back corner table, dressed simply in a fitted black sweater and jeans, her curls pulled into a low bun. No makeup, no armor,
Just truth. The clock on the wall read 1:02 when Julian walked in. He looked different. No designer suit, no entourage. Just a navy button-down, sleeves rolled, and jeans that made him look more like a regular man than the billionaire heir to Masters Global. He spotted her instantly, his steps faltering just a moment before he approached the table. Naomi didn't stand. Julian slid into the seat across from her. "You look good." She gave him a hard stare. "We're not doing pleasantries, Julian." He nodded, folding his hands on the table. "Okay, then let's talk." "You said you didn't know," Naomi began. "But I need you to understand how much that not knowing cost me." Julian leaned forward slightly. "I want to understand. That's why I'm here." Naomi's jaw tensed. "I was 22, Julian, fresh out of school. I had job offers lined up, scholarships for grad programs. And then pregnant, with triplets, and you were gone. No warning, no goodbye." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I thought you ghosted me." "You're serious?" Naomi scoffed. "You thought I disappeared for no reason. Did I ever strike you as the type to walk away like that?" "I was 21, Julian said. "Stupid. Immature. I saw you with some guy at that spot on 10th and I panicked. I assumed. And then London happened, and I buried it." "You buried me," Naomi said, her voice cracking. "You buried the possibility of us. And when things got hard, you vanished." Julian dropped his gaze. "You're right. The server came by to ask if they wanted anything." Naomi shook her head. Julian ordered a water. Naomi took a breath. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to be that woman, chasing down a man who'd already chosen to leave." "You could have called," Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I thought about it," Naomi admitted. 100 times, but every time I got close, I remembered how easy it was for you to forget me." Julian's expression tightened. "I didn't forget. I just convinced myself it didn't matter." Naomi let that hang in the air. After a long silence, Julian spoke again. "They're amazing." "The boys. I spent maybe 20 minutes with them, and they're sharp, brave. They've got your fire. They've got your eyes," Naomi said quietly. Julian looked up. "They're yours." "All three. I never doubted it. I just didn't know how to start that conversation." Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin envelope, placing it on the table. "What is this?" Naomi asked, eyeing it warily. "Legal paperwork, a draft." "No pressure, no expectations, just protection. If anything happens to me, I want them taken care of. There's a trust, medical insurance, and educational support. Everything's in their names, irrevocable." Naomi didn't touch the envelope. "I'm not here for a payday, Julian." "I know that," he said. "That's why I'm doing it. You did everything on your own." "I should have been there." She stared at him. "You weren't." "I want to be now." Naomi's phone buzzed on the table, a message from Tanisha. "News outlets are picking it up." "You and the boys are officially a story." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "This is a media circus." "I've already had 2 producers contact me for interviews." "They'll twist it," Julian said. "That's what they do." "And yet your PR machine hasn't said a word," Naomi pointed out. "What are you waiting for?" "Damage control? I didn't want to go public without talking to you first." Naomi raised a brow. "Respect. That's new." Julian let out a short laugh. "I earned that." Before Naomi could respond, a familiar voice cut through the cafe. "Well, this is cozy."
They both turned to see Camilla Langford standing near their table, dressed in a crisp ivory suit, her blonde hair pulled back like a polished dagger. Naomi's back straightened.
Camilla, Julian stood. What are you doing here?
I came to get my closure, Camilla said, stepping closer. Imagine my surprise when I find the happy little reunion already happening. Naomi stood now too. If you have something to say it. Camilla's smile was all teeth. Oh, I will. I hope you enjoy the headlines, Naomi. Because as of this morning, my father's media contacts are preparing a very detailed article about you, the mysterious woman who trapped a billionaire with 3 fatherless children. Julian's face paled. Camilla, stop. No, she snapped. You humiliated me, my family, and now you're playing house with this woman and her project kids? Naomi's voice was ice. Watch your mouth. Camilla didn't flinch. If you think this ends with trust funds and public sympathy, you're dumber than I thought. Naomi stepped forward, eyes blazing. Let me make one thing clear. I didn't trap anyone. I raised 3 sons who are more honest and dignified than half the men in your father's boardroom, and I don't need your approval. I don't even need your attention. Don't do this, Camilla, Julian said quietly. Walk away. Camilla gave one last smirk, then turned on her heel and stormed out. Naomi sat down slowly, her hands trembling.
She's not done, Julian said. I know.
Naomi looked out the window, past the parked cars and passing pedestrians. Then she turned back to Julian. You said you wanted to help? Then start protecting them. Because this just got real. Julian nodded. Whatever it takes. Naomi picked up the envelope and slid it into her bag. You'll need to do more than write checks. You'll need to choose sides. Julian met her gaze without flinching. I already did. They sat in silence as the storm outside started to brew. Inside, 2 people, once fractured by time, pride, and silence, were beginning to understand what it meant to build something from the wreckage. And neither of them was backing down. The next morning, the story had gone national. Naomi didn't even have to check her phone. Her front porch was already a minefield of reporters, flashing cameras and microphones shoved past her front gate. Headlines screamed variations of the same phrase. Billionaire's engagement destroyed by secret triplets, the DNA bombshell that rocked the master's empire. Her boys were still upstairs, thankfully asleep, or pretending to be. Either way, they didn't need to see this. Not yet. She drew the blinds and stepped away from the window, her heart pounding against her ribs. The moment she'd feared for a decade had finally arrived, and it wasn't just knocking, it had blown the damn door off its hinges. She called Julian. Are you okay? He answered immediately, his voice hoarse. They're outside my building too. No, Naomi said flatly. I'm not okay. My boys are being treated like a tabloid scandal. What happened to keeping this private? Julian sounded weary. I didn't release anything. Then your ex did, Naomi spat. Camilla's family owns half the news cycle. I'll handle it. Naomi almost laughed. How? With a tweet. This isn't a boardroom, Julian. This is my home. My son's safety. I'm already making calls. Lawyers, PR. Security if we need it. A pause. I should have seen this coming, Julian admitted. I underestimated how far Camilla would go. She's not the problem anymore, Naomi replied. The problem is the damage she already caused. There was silence on the line. I want a press conference, she said finally. Julian's breath hitched. Naomi? No, listen. If we don't control the narrative, they will. I want to stand beside you and say the truth on our terms. I want them to hear from the boys too, when they're ready. Julian exhaled slowly. Okay, let's do it together. Naomi ended the call and stared at her own reflection in the dark screen of the TV. Her face was tired, her eyes sharp. The same look she wore the day she decided she would raise 3 boys alone and give them everything she never had. Upstairs, a soft knock echoed from the hallway. "Mom?" It was Caleb, the most sensitive of the 3, always the first to check on her. "Are you okay?" She opened the door and saw all 3 boys behind him, their pajamas wrinkled, eyes alert. "You saw the news," Naomi said softly. They nodded. "It's everywhere," Micah muttered, his voice low. "We didn't mean for this," Elias added, his gaze falling to the carpet. Naomi crouched in front of them and cupped their faces one by one. "I'm not mad. You were brave. You stood for the truth." "But now everyone knows," Caleb whispered. "Even kids at school." "Then they'll know that your father is a real man who came back," Naomi said. "And that you are loved." Fiercely. By both of us. She paused. "Do you want to meet him again?" Micah hesitated. "Is he staying this time?" Naomi nodded. "He says he wants to." "Then yeah," Micah replied. "We want to." That afternoon, Julian picked them up in a black SUV with tinted windows. His driver, a former Secret Service agent, greeted Naomi by name. There were no cameras following them this time. Julian had pulled favors with powerful friends and the streets near Naomi's home had been cleared of press by noon. The meeting was held at a quiet venue in downtown Oakland, surrounded by towering trees and secured like a presidential briefing. Julian had called in his media team and arranged a live stream. The goal, transparency. But what Naomi didn't expect was the twist that came an hour before the cameras rolled. "I need to tell you something," Julian said, pacing the green room while Naomi and the triplets sat nearby. Naomi raised a brow. "Now's not a great time." Julian looked haunted. "Camilla didn't just leak the story. She fabricated documents, tried to frame the boys' birth certificates as forgeries. She claimed you forged the DNA." Naomi stood up. "She what?" "She's filing a lawsuit," Julian said. "Defamation. Fraud. Attempting to manipulate inheritance rights." Naomi's chest constricted. "That's insane. She's not after truth. She's after revenge." "Let her come," Naomi said coldly. "We'll bury her in evidence. I already had my legal team file a cease and desist, but we need to go further." Julian pulled out a folder and handed it to Naomi. "I want to make this official. I want legal recognition of the boys as my heirs. Publicly." "Permanently?" Naomi opened the folder. Inside were papers, guardianship confirmation, name additions, even school transfer offers to elite private academies. "You're serious?" she murmured. "I've never been more serious," Julian said. "They're my sons, and I want them to have the name, the legacy, the protection that comes with it." Naomi's throat tightened. "What if this backfires? What if this paints an even bigger target?" Julian stepped closer. "Then let them come for me." "But they will never touch you, or them." When the conference began, the room was tense. Julian stepped up first, addressing the crowd of reporters and live stream viewers with poise. "My name is Julian Masters," he said, "and for the last 10 years, I've lived with a blind spot in my life. That ends today." He introduced Naomi, who walked onto the platform with her shoulders square, chin lifted. "I raised 3 sons, alone, not because I was abandoned, but because I chose not to chase a man who had left without warning. Now that man has returned, and for the sake of our children, we're building something new. Not perfect, but honest." Then, to everyone's surprise, the triplets joined them on stage. Caleb took the mic first. "We're not here to embarrass anyone," he said. "We just wanted to meet our dad." Micah added, "We're proud of our mom."
"She's the strongest person we know," Elias concluded. "And we're proud to be masters, because we made it through, even before we had the name." The press was stunned. Even the most jaded reporters looked moved. After the event, Julian and Naomi stepped off stage and watched the room buzz. "Camilla's already spinning," Julian said, reading a text from his assistant. "But she won't win." Public sentiment shifted the second they saw your boys. Naomi gave a small smile. "They're easy to love. Just like their mom." She looked at him, surprised by the softness in his voice. "Don't start something you're not ready to finish, Julian," she warned. He met her gaze. "I'm already in it." Outside, cameras still clicked, but the narrative had changed. They weren't just chasing gossip anymore. They were watching a family being rebuilt in real time. And for the first time in a decade, Naomi allowed herself to believe in the possibility of more. The fallout from the press conference was seismic. Overnight, Julian Masters went from tabloid target to a surprisingly sympathetic figure. Social media buzzed with clips of the triplets' heartfelt statements. Naomi's calm, collected presence made headlines. The woman who raised giants. Even former critics of Julian now praised his decision to publicly recognize his sons and sever ties with Camilla. But Camilla wasn't retreating quietly. 3 days after the press conference, Naomi received an official letter from the San Mateo County Courthouse. Camilla Sheffield versus Naomi Hill and Julian Masters. The claim: fraud, defamation, and conspiracy to mislead the public about paternity and inheritance rights. Naomi stood in her kitchen, gripping the envelope, her knuckles white. Julian arrived an hour later, a storm already brewing in his eyes. "She went through with it," Naomi said, handing him the letter. Julian scanned the pages, jaw tight. "I figured she might, but not this fast. Can she actually do this?" He sighed. "She can file. But it won't stick, especially not with the DNA results, my legal declaration, and the public announcement." "But that doesn't mean the damage won't ripple," Naomi said. "The boys have school, friends, a life." "What if this drags on for months?" Julian looked up, his eyes softening. "Then we fight together, and we shield them every step of the way." As if on cue, Elias peeked in from the hallway. "Is something wrong?" he asked, his tone cautious. Naomi walked over, kneeling to his level. "Nothing for you to worry about, baby." "Just boring grown-up stuff." Elias didn't buy it. He glanced at Julian. "You're not leaving, are you?" Julian walked over and knelt beside them. "Not unless your mom kicks me out." Naomi raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. That night, Julian called an emergency meeting with his legal team. They gathered at his private residence overlooking the bay. Naomi joined reluctantly, dressed in a simple navy blouse and jeans, still unsure how involved she wanted to be in the legal storm that was brewing. Across the long marble table, Julian's head lawyer, Celeste Rhodes, flipped through the lawsuit. "She's trying to claim that Naomi used the kids to leverage financial status and misrepresent biological ties," Celeste explained. "She's grasping at straws, but the media narrative matters. If we let this sit too long, public sympathy can shift." Julian leaned back, rubbing his temples. "So what do you suggest?" "Counterclaim," Celeste said sharply. "Publicly, immediately. We sue her for slander, malicious intent, and emotional distress inflicted on your children." Naomi shifted in her seat. "Won't that just fan the flames?" Celeste gave her a look. "It will shut her down. She wanted attention." "We'll give her consequences instead." Julian looked over at Naomi. "Your call." Naomi hesitated. Part of her wanted to walk away from the chaos, return to the quiet life she'd built. But another part, the mother in her, knew this wasn't just about her anymore. Camilla had tried to erase her boys from their own story. That wasn't something she could let slide. "Let's do it," Naomi said, her voice steady. "She doesn't get to lie and walk away clean." The room moved swiftly after that. Celeste and her team began drafting the counterclaim, collecting every statement Camilla had made to the press. Naomi's social worker background gave her insight into family systems, and she helped craft the emotional impact segment of their case, how Camilla's actions disrupted the boys' lives. That night, after everyone had gone, Julian and Naomi stood together on his balcony, the bay lights twinkling in the distance. "I didn't know you were this fierce," Julian said, sipping from his glass. Naomi chuckled. "I had to be. You don't raise 3 black boys in this country and not learn how to fight." He turned to her. "You didn't just raise them. You raised good men in the making." She looked at him, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. "I wasn't always sure I was doing it right." Julian set his glass down and reached for her hand. "You did it right, Naomi. Even without me." They stood there for a moment in silence, the breeze lifting strands of her hair. "Julian," she said finally, her voice lower, "why did you leave?" It was the question that had haunted her for 10 years. He exhaled slowly. "Because I was scared. I didn't know I'd gotten you pregnant. I got that job in New York and took it without looking back. I thought I was chasing something bigger. I didn't realize the biggest thing I ever had was already right here." Naomi studied his face, trying to find the lie. But there was only regret. "I hated you for so long," she whispered, "and I told myself I didn't. But I did." "I know," he said. "I hated myself too." She looked away, blinking fast. "You don't get to fix everything overnight," she said. "I'm not trying to," Julian replied. "I just want to be here now." The next week, Camilla escalated again. She went on national television and gave a venom-laced interview claiming Julian had cheated on her with Naomi and that Naomi had groomed him in college. It was absurd, but it went viral. Suddenly hashtags were trending, with people choosing sides. Julian's team moved fast. Celeste leaked their counterclaim details strategically. A former employee of Camilla's came forward, anonymously, with a signed affidavit. Camilla had been planning the media leak for over a year. It wasn't retaliation. It was premeditated sabotage. Then, the bombshell dropped. Camilla's own half-brother, a once estranged family member, posted receipts on social media showing that she had offered him money to forge a hospital employee's credentials and alter Naomi's medical records. It was too much. The case collapsed. Camilla was discredited, her media appearances pulled from syndication. She was issued a gag order and fined for contempt of court. Her social media accounts were flooded with backlash, and sponsorships pulled out. Within days, she disappeared from the public eye. Julian walked into Naomi's kitchen one morning, holding up the final legal document. "She's officially gone," he said, dropping the papers on the table. Naomi stared at them in disbelief. "Just like that?" "She messed with the wrong family." For the first time in months, Naomi felt the tension leave her shoulders. The storm was over. That night, they sat on the porch watching the boys play basketball in the driveway. "They're happy," Julian said. Naomi smiled. "They're starting to believe you'll stay." "I'm starting to believe I deserve to." She didn't reply, but she didn't move her hand away when he reached for it. And in that quiet moment, no cameras, no noise, no war, Naomi realized something terrifying and wonderful. She wasn't angry anymore. The weeks that followed were, for once, quiet. Peaceful even. With Camilla legally silenced and Julian's public image restored, the family settled into something close to normal. Naomi went back to teaching part-time at a local community college, the Triplets returned to school, and Julian, well, he started showing up more. At school pickup, at weekend breakfast, at doctor's appointments, at bedtime stories. It wasn't that he was suddenly a perfect father. He still fumbled over algebra homework and occasionally forgot whose turn it was to sit in the front seat. But he was there, present, and for Naomi, that was the part she never thought would happen. On a breezy Saturday afternoon, Julian hosted a backyard cookout at his lakefront home. He'd invited a small group: Naomi, the boys, Julian's parents, a few colleagues, and some of the neighbors. The smell of grilled salmon and smoked ribs filled the air. Kids chased each other across the lawn, and someone had set up an old Bluetooth speaker that alternated between Marvin Gaye and Doja Cat. Naomi wore a soft yellow sundress that floated when she walked. Julian couldn't take his eyes off her. "You should tell her," his sister Miranda said, nudging him as she balanced a plate of corn on the cob and coleslaw. "Before someone else does." Julian glanced at Naomi, who was laughing with one of the triplets, Elias probably. "Tell her what?" "That you're planning to propose. You think we haven't noticed the way you keep checking your pocket every 5 minutes?" "Just do it already," Julian swallowed. "She's not ready." Miranda rolled her eyes. "Neither were you." Before Julian could reply, a voice cut through the crowd. "Naomi?" Naomi turned, confused. A tall man in a navy blazer and jeans stood just outside the yard. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with sharp features and a striking resemblance to Julian. Julian's entire posture shifted. "Uncle Reggie?" he muttered. The man stepped forward, removing his sunglasses. "Long time, Jules." Julian tensed. "What are you doing here?" Naomi watched the exchange carefully. There was a shift in energy. The easy vibe of the party dissolved into something taut and electric. "I heard about the boys," Reggie said. "I wanted to meet them." "And her?" He looked at Naomi. Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Your family?" Julian exhaled heavily. "My father's brother. He hasn't been around in years." "Correction," Reggie said smoothly. "Your father made it clear he didn't want me around. There's a difference." "Don't do this now," Julian said. "We're not doing this here." But Naomi was already alert. Her instincts as a mother, as a woman who had spent the better part of a decade raising 3 boys alone, were sharp. "What do you want?" she asked plainly. Reggie smiled. "I came with an offer." Julian shook his head. "No. We're not doing business. We're not doing favors." But Reggie ignored him, pulling a folder from his satchel and handing it to Naomi. "I represent a biotech firm based in Atlanta. We're looking for family-centered spokespeople, relatable, grounded. Diverse. The campaign would pay 6 figures, for each of the boys." Julian looked like he was about to erupt. "Are you out of your mind?" he snapped. "You show up uninvited to my home, hand my kids a contract and think that's okay?" "I'm offering an opportunity," Reggie said coolly. "Something you should have done years ago instead of playing pretend billionaire." Naomi, flipping through the contract, suddenly paused. "Wait," she said, looking up at Reggie. "Why do you have their birth dates, medical history, and school records in here?" Julian stepped forward, snatching the folder. "What the hell is this?" Reggie didn't flinch. "Public records. You're a public figure now. Things leak." "No, this is more than public." "This is detailed," Julian said, flipping through the pages. "How did you even get access to this?" Naomi's voice was suddenly sharp. "Did you hack into our accounts?" Reggie smiled faintly. "I have people." "Get out," Julian said, voice low, dangerous. Reggie turned toward Naomi. Think about the offer.
You're a smart woman. Raising 3 boys is no joke. This could set them up for life.
Naomi stood her ground. They already are, without your help. Reggie gave a slight bow, turned, and walked away. But the damage was done. Later that night, after the guests left and the triplets had gone to bed, Julian and Naomi sat in the quiet of his living room, the folder between them. You believe he had this info before the press conference? She asked. Julian nodded. He's a snake, always has been. But he's also rich, connected and vindictive. You think he's behind Camilla? Julian hesitated. I wouldn't be surprised. They ran in the same circles for a while. Naomi leaned back, arms folded. Why do I feel like this isn't over? Because it's not, Julian admitted. And if Reggie's involved, it means one thing. He's planning something bigger. Naomi turned toward him. Then we stay ahead of him. We don't just wait for the next hit. We move first. Julian raised an eyebrow. What do you have in mind? She smiled. It's time we reminded everyone who this family really is. And for the first time, Julian realized something. Naomi wasn't just the woman he had left behind. She was the woman who stood beside him now, battle-ready, spine straight, eyes forward. They were no longer reacting. They were preparing for war. The morning after Reggie's visit, Naomi woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. It was as if the years of raising 3 boys on her own, juggling 2 jobs, swallowing back hurt and disappointment, had all been leading to this moment. Not one of collapse, but of quiet, measured strength. Julian was already up, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows in his home office. His phone was buzzing non-stop. News alerts, investor group messages. Whispers that Reggie might be angling for a board takeover at one of Julian's subsidiaries. It was a classic power move. They're gonna come for you, Naomi said, walking in and gently placing a cup of coffee on his desk. Julian didn't look away from the glass. Let them. She took a seat across from him. We need to think this through. Not emotionally, not out of pride. Reggie plays dirty. He knows how to make a mess look like a revolution. Julian finally turned to face her. What would you do? Naomi smiled softly. Fight back. But with precision. They spent the next 3 days drawing up a plan. Naomi, in all her unexpected brilliance, suggested reaching out to a whistleblower attorney, a woman named Cynthia Greaves, who had successfully exposed corporate corruption at a pharmaceutical giant. Julian made the call. Within 24 hours, Cynthia flew in from New York, reviewed the intel Naomi had helped gather from Reggie's past clients, and confirmed their suspicions. This isn't just about your kids, Cynthia told them. This is about controlling the narrative of black excellence. Reggie wants to be the face of success without accountability. You and Naomi. You're the truth, and that's threatening. Julian exhaled. So what do? We expose him, publicly, carefully. But first, we get your house in order. With Cynthia's help, they held a closed-door board meeting. Julian laid everything on the table. Emails Reggie had sent to a tabloid journalist, attempts to buy off Naomi's ex-colleagues for dirt, even payments to Camilla to incite that wedding crash narrative. By the end of the meeting, Reggie was removed from all voting positions. A new clause was added to protect Julian's children from public exploitation, but that wasn't the end. Naomi, fueled by something far deeper than revenge, called a press conference. It was live-streamed on every major news outlet. Standing before the cameras in a sleek navy suit, flanked by Julian and their 3 sons, Naomi spoke clearly and without notes. My name is Naomi Carter. I raised these boys on my own for 10 years, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Their father and I, We lost each other in the noise of youth and ambition.
But our children never stopped believing, and they brought us back.
She paused, looking straight into the cameras.
They say a black mother is made of steel.
But I'm not. I've broken down behind closed doors more times than I can count. I've been afraid. Angry. Alone. But today I'm standing here not as a symbol, not as a headline, but as a human being who chose not to stay silent. Julian stepped forward. We are not perfect, but we're accountable. And we will protect our children, not just from paparazzi or opportunists in suits, but from a system that sees black families as scandal instead of strength. The room was silent, until applause broke out. Later that night, after the boys had fallen asleep watching a Marvel movie for the 15th time, Julian took Naomi's hand and led her to the backyard. The stars were out. He knelt, not with extravagance, not with cameras, but in the soft glow of the porch light. Naomi, you've always been the anchor, the fire, the truth. I was too blind to see. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for forever. Will you marry me? Naomi laughed, wiping away tears. You're lucky I still believe in second chances. She nodded. Yes. A few months later, they married in a quiet ceremony under the trees near the lake. No press. No glitz. Just love. And on the day of their wedding, Julian knelt again, this time before the triplets, and handed each of them a ring. These are not just symbols, he said, voice trembling. They're my promise to always be your father. No more missed birthdays. No more wondering. I'm here. I'm yours. Forever. Elias hugged him first, then Micah, then the ever-serious Isaiah. And for once, Julian let himself cry. Because in the end, this wasn't just a redemption story. It was a story of returning, of fighting through ego, mistakes and shame to choose love. Real, messy, transformative love. So, to all those watching, to every single parent who's ever carried more than their share, to every child who's felt forgotten, to every man or woman who's walked away and still has time to come back, this story is for you. Because no matter how far gone you think you are, there's still a road home. If this story touched you, if you believe in redemption, in family, in second chances, subscribe to our channel, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We've got more stories that will move your soul. This was Black Triplets Crash Billionaire's Wedding. DNA test leaves everyone in shock. And we'll see you in the next one.